breaking news about Benny Gantz resigning from the wartime government. For people who aren't holding a microscope over the story like we are, who is Benny Gantz and what significance is this going to play going forward?
So Benny Gantz is a former IDF chief of staff, a general in the army. He's the head of a significant party in the Knesset. He was in the opposition to Netanyahu's more right-wing government, but on the immediate aftermath of October 7th, he joined to create a unity emergency government so that there would be a wider consensus in the Israeli government moving forward. It was also important for the way it looked that we're unified in this war and there's no infighting in Israel. Now that he's pulled out of the government, just so people can understand, Israel's Knesset has 120 seats. And now Netanyahu's majority is down to 64, which means that the more right-wing extreme in his government is now going to say, okay, Prime Minister Netanyahu, please listen to what we have to say about the war, which would be much more hawkish in their approach, or else we will topple the government. He's going to be hearing calls for toppling his government from the right, and now he has a stronger opposition against him that will be calling for elections as well, and he's going to be caught in the middle trying to manage a war both in Gaza and the increased hostilities in the north with Hezbollah.
And Dov, you say even more hawkish. What does that look like?
The question is, what should Israel be doing militarily at this point? We've definitely done significant damage to Hamas, but like I said, as we saw yesterday, they are not destroyed. There still are significant numbers of Hamas terrorists there. It means going even harder to try to get those terrorists. As we learned yesterday, those terrorists are in the middle of quote-unquote refugee camps, which Israel goes out of its way to try to avoid civilian casualties. But it does mean a perspective which says we have to think about Israel first and foremost, and we cannot pull out of Gaza until we know we have rooted out those terrorists, even if there is a civilian cost. If I can just put it into historic terms for a moment, it's similar to a decision the United States made, and I'm not in any way suggesting use of these kinds of weapons at all in this conflict, but in World War II, the U.S. had to make a decision to use certain strength which killed civilians in order to defeat the enemy. So the call would be, let's be even stronger to root out Hamas, destroy Hamas, to make sure that we don't leave this war with any kind of real remnant of Hamas that could be in danger to Israel.
I have to say, I got chills yesterday when I saw the video of the 4 hostages coming home and also getting to meet with the Prime Minister. And then you read further and you see the hundreds of Palestinian lives lost. And then you see all the protesters outside of the White House. We had our Alina Shirazi out there yesterday and reporting on how rowdy the crowds are and trying to beseech President Biden to do even more to urge Netanyahu and saying, this is our red line, and, you know, painting their hands red and all of that. So it's still just such a hot and complicated issue. We've got Secretary of State Antony Blinken. He's heading to the Middle East yet again. What has to be done in order for a ceasefire to take place, and how can he help?
Well, first of all, I would ask all those protesters, what would they do if their 26-year-old daughter went to a dance party, a celebration of love and peace, and was brutally taken hostage by monster terrorists who came into our country and videoed themselves raping young women, and she's held in a hostage for over 200 days? What would they say if that was their daughter? And would they say, don't go rescue her, because while rescuing her, there might be terrorists that will fire and civilians will be killed? I believe that they would be saying, go rescue their daughter. They're not looking at it that way, and they're looking at it as someone who they're not familiar with, but that's the way we look at it.
So Noah, what does Blinken need to do?
And all the, and Almog and Andre and Shlomi, they're our brothers, they're our sons, and we will do whatever we have to do to rescue them while trying to avoid civilian casualties. Yeah, the Secretary of State, I don't know that there's much that he can do. Right now, the pressure is going to be on Hamas. The United States knows that Israel has gone as far as it can go in making concessions for a deal. Now the pressure is going to be on Hamas from Qatar and from Egypt and from other places. And let's see if they can somehow squeeze Hamas to agree to a deal. Will they still gain the release of hundreds of Hamas murdering terrorists from Israeli prisons? That's how far we're willing to go to get these hostages released. I do not think Hamas will agree to it, because right now, Sinwar and the people around him, they know that the hostages are protecting their lives. They're hunkered down in caves while the civilians above are suffering, and they have the hostages around them. Israel has taken a strong stance. They said they are willing to even cease fire for a certain period of time, but we cannot ever agree to withhold fire completely as long as Hamas exists in Gaza, as long as they are dedicated to destruction of Israel and committing the massacres and the atrocities of October 7th again. That is the red line that we cannot cross. The U.S. understands that, and therefore the pressure will now be on Hamas to release the hostages and try to lower the tensions in the region.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your screen. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.